I personally, and I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I personally know so many people that have died. It is ridiculous. And I thought I was going to be one of them back in March when I got the virus.
You had a bad case, right?
I had, well, I didn't have to be hospitalized, thank God, but I was trying to get hospitalized because I was scared and I didn't know. You know, it was like the same week that they closed school, March 15th, they closed school. March 18th is when I discovered I had a fever, or the 19th, I discovered I had a fever. And I went to the hospital, and they, at that time, they weren't testing people. They were scared. They were running out of PPP. They didn't have enough tests. And they told me to go home and self-quarantine. I had a fever for 10 days. You know, that thing was scary. I mean, every night when I laid down and go to bed, I didn't think I was going to wake up the next morning. Bad cough. It was terrible. So I thought, and at that time, I had already heard about 3 people that I had knew that had died. So it's like, you know, that ought to put things into perspective, you know, with your own self. You know, how am I living? If that would have happened to me, you know, if those that believe the Bible, because everybody don't believe the Bible. If you don't believe the Bible, then I can't convince you. You know, that's you.
Yeah.
People like, you know, me, it's like, you know, is my life really lined up with what I believe in the word? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Living how I'm supposed to live?
I didn't know you had COVID until I think one day on Instagram, you did like a video where you was outside and you said that, you know, like never taking a breath for granted again.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, he had COVID. I know because churches were kind of a hotbed for this thing before we knew what was happening.
Right. Absolutely.
Between that March and April timeframe where people were still figuring it out. And like you, I know 3 people who I grew up and went to church with who passed away from it. Another person who was a pastor. He beat it, but he said he didn't feel that sick since he was like 11 and he had a really bad case of pneumonia. And so he said that he thought he was going to go as well. And so I know, I think 7 or 8 people who passed away from this, from COVID. And I definitely remember the anxiety, the stress that I had. I didn't even have this thing, just from everything around me happening. I was just anxious, stressed. I couldn't do much. I convinced myself that I did have it for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because it was anxiety. And for those of you that don't know, you could have an anxiety, I call it a session, because for me it wasn't an attack. It lasted for like a good couple of weeks where I psychologically talked myself into kind of, you know, the shortness of breath and stuff. But I didn't have it.
Feeling everything.
Yeah. I was taking my temperature on like a daily basis. But to your experience with the virus, going to sleep, not knowing if you would wake up, were you kind of, you know, having, you know, talks with God and like, what was that like? Because for me, I didn't have COVID, but when I was hospitalized a couple of years ago, I remember thinking, you know, I might not come out this hospital because you just don't know what's going to happen, right? And in my case, I had a bad back injury. I didn't know if I would walk again. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know, you know, and so for me, I had to come to peace almost with not knowing. And whatever happens, that is what is meant to happen. Maybe I don't walk again anymore. Maybe I'll be wheelchair confined for the rest of my life. But if that does happen, that is what was meant to happen. What was it like for you, you know, going through what you was going through night after night?
Again, I had anxiety as well. My anxiety was, you know, I can watch the news all day. People that come over my house and I got the news on. I watch news in the morning. As soon as I get up, I'm watching local news, ABC News,
everything.
Born in America. While I had COVID, I could not watch the news. Couldn't watch news. I had to. Of course, I was quarantined in the house. Not much for me to do. Watch TV. News. Literally, I could not take an announcement. I had to. Did we lose you for a minute?
Yeah, you lost me for a second. So you were explaining how you had anxiety, you know, as well.
Yeah, I had anxiety, so I just was watching sitcoms and Netflix during the whole thing. Again, it makes death and more real. Because like people like were literally just like out of nowhere every day I'm hearing about somebody new, so I had to tell one of my friends, do not call me with another person. I can't take it because I'm here in the house alone at that. I'm in the house by myself, um, uh, fighting with this same thing that's out there killing people. And at that time, Italy, I think it was like 600 a day, 700 a day. And whereas most of them were elderly, they said people with underlying conditions. And I had secondhand smoker's bronchitis, and I'm pretty much borderline diabetic. And those were two of the issues, so I had to, really, be careful with that. But coughing, my chest, it was so bad. I would literally like cough. I have a bathroom in my room, and I would lay in the bed and cough. And I would go in the bathroom because I thought I was just going to cough up. And I had nothing to cough up because I didn't have an appetite. But I just thought I was going to cough up my lungs or something like that. It was just so bad. And breathing, I developed breathing problems a couple days in, and I went back to the ER. And they did chest x-rays to make sure I still didn't have pneumonia. They did the first time, they did it the second time to make sure there was no pneumonia there. So laying in bed and like with the reality, like this could be the end. This might be the end for me. Having conversations with God, and then like wondering what actually happens, because none of us know what happens in death.
Nope.
The truth of the matter is, we believe what we believe by faith.
That's right.
Okay. I believe what I believe by faith. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a real person. I could be totally wrong. Jesus could not exist. There could be no such thing as God, but I believe it by faith. I mean, I do believe it.
I understand what you're saying 100%. See, people who don't want to be honest will say that means you don't really have faith. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that faith. I think what's the faith is the
faith is the thing. See, you got because faith is the substance. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Yes, thank you. I should know that. I should know that. But yeah, so we have faith and we believe these things are going to take place. But when you are looking into the face of death, and most of us probably won't have that experience. For some of us will die in our sleep. Some of us will die in like an accident. Well, it'll just hit us. But in your case, you had the rare experience of what they call looking death in the face, where it's slow. It can happen. It cannot happen. Night in, night out. When you're in a position that he is in, yes, you do realize I could die and poof. Game over, right? Those things, those thoughts come into your mind, and yeah, I just don't think people realize, because one of the things that I've been thinking about, we don't hear from anyone who's recovered from COVID. Have you noticed that?
Recovered in which way? Recovered
from it, like your story. I kind of don't hear about it that much.
Okay.
All these Americans seem to have it and seem to have recovered from it, but you're not hearing anybody. People get on Twitter and Instagram and talk about everything in the world. You ain't hearing nothing about,
not as much as, I do know some people that have had it. I spoke to a few people that have had it.
Okay.
With their stories. I think comparing different stories. Actually, one of my cousins has it right now. We were at a wedding.
Oh boy.
It wasn't a crowded wedding.
Okay.
It was a big building, and so it at least seats about 1,000 people, and maybe if 100 people were there at the wedding. But the thing about that is that the groom had it. See, if a regular attendee had it, they might have, just been the way, that people want to greet the bride and groom. I shook the groom's hand, I hugged the bride and they kissed. One of my cousins, she wound up getting it. Some of my family got tested. They are negative, but at least I know of 2 people already that are positive. But from the people that I spoke to that had it, I don't know anybody that's had a fever as long as I've had one.
Yeah, 10 days is a long time.
Yeah, 10. I was checking my temperature every time I went to the bathroom, and I was going to the bathroom a lot because they were saying to drink a lot of liquids.
Yeah,
So I'm
because you're
going
sweating it
about
all out.
10 times a day or whatever. And every time I go to the bathroom, I check my temperature. But I do know people, they said they've had it for a day, they had it for 3 days or whatever. The people that had body aches, I didn't have the body aches, but I had the temperature, I had the trouble breathing, I had a bad cough, I lost my appetite and couldn't eat, and I had diarrhea.
Yeah.
And I thought I was making myself sick at first because I wasn't eating food from outside, I was cooking my own food. It's like, why I got diarrhea? And when I looked it up, it was a symptom of coronavirus. But I do, one person I know, he's been in the hospital. He was in the hospital for over a month, and he's about 60 something years old, in his early 60s. He's still suffering with some of the after effects of COVID, and he had that back in the spring.
So he's a long hauler.
Yeah. So, but he's, and I still now, if I take a deep breath now, I can kind of feel it. And sometimes when I go to bed now, I'm like, oh my God, do I got COVID again? Do I, it's.
Yeah. It's like it is such a weird disease. It has so many symptoms that vary from person to person. Like, it makes no logical sense, which adds to my theory that I think this has been manipulated slightly by man. I don't think this is just a nature virus, but I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But so how we got into the COVID stuff because you were saying that because of what happened to you, you are a lot. It kind of not relit your faith, but it adds another dimension to your faith. Is that safe to say?
It causes me to see life as very fragile, and of course the unknown, what tomorrow is. Everybody's looking to get out of 2020, waiting for 2021. I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Well, January 1st is going to be the same as December 31st.
Yes.
If we don't do anything different, ain't no difference between 2020 and 2021. Our minds, have to be adjusted, but it makes life more. It made life for me more real, and the fragility of life. So
I get it. I totally get it.